Spoilers. Spoilers, this will end. Okay, so we're going to cover a couple topics today. First off, we're all thrilled to be here and excited that you guys are here too. So the group to my left here today, they're going to talk about how and why Gearbox has tried to make more inclusive games and everything that they've done and hope to do in the future. Then from there, we want to hear from you guys. What can we do moving ahead, and answer any of the questions that you may have in the time before they kick us out. So that said, let's get underway. Anthony, that's Ellie cosplay. I'm just skipping ahead, right ahead.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so just really briefly, and it's going to be kind of masturbatory, but I just want to sort of set a baseline for like what we've been trying to do, so that when we talk to you about what we can do better, you can like have a point of reference. So apologies for me masturbating. But in Borderlands 2, we did try to do a lot of work to have characters that were inclusive of different body types, like Ellie, for example. When we see cosplay like that, it's the best thing in the entire world to us. And we had characters like Sir Hammerlock, who is gay, and there were also certain characters that we found out after Ship had some interest. So like Axton was what is the playable soldier, and I had written a piece of dialogue for him that initially I assumed would be triggered based on which character you're reviving, where he would like hit on the person he's reviving because you're really intimate, you're like getting close and like lifting up. And he would say, "Oh, cool, do you like work out?" and he would just think you were really hot. And then we didn't ever put in the code that made him limit that to just one of the female characters, and so he sort of became bisexual by accident. And I mentioned that in an interview, and a lot of people on our forums were like, "Oh, that's awesome! Like you have a bisexual protagonist." We're like, "Oh, cool! Well, then it was totally intentional, and everything's great." So we did that, and there's a character called Mr. Torg that I wrote that started out as basically just a really horribly stereotypical Macho Man Randy Savage type character who would like say like actually offensive things because I think all of us are still learning and trying to be less shitty people as we go on. And when I started writing the game 3 years ago, I was markedly more shitty than I am now. So he would say things like, "If you don't like explosions, you're probably wearing women's underwear." Like, haha, stupid sexist bullshit like that. And then as I try to get less fucking stupid in my life, he's became more and more of like a fun like social justice warrior kind of guy. So like when you meet him in the last DLC, he's having an argument about how Ellie is really, really pretty, and if you can't see that, then your body politics need work. And so yeah, that's kind of how we've tried to diversify the cast of Borderlands 2, and we do so, at least partially, and you guys can elaborate on this and I'll stop talking, because we believe that, and when I say we, I don't mean everybody at Gearbox because of the liability and we don't want to speak for anybody else and all that shit, but that, you know, making art more inclusive can make the world a better place. Mae Jemison is the first black female astronaut in space, and when people ask her who her inspiration was, she said, "Who are on Star Trek." Like, there's a direct correlation between cool pop culture character leading to real life things being better. So that's sort of the thing that makes me interested in making more diverse casts, and I'll stop talking.
No, it's true.
And from a studio point of view, it's really important. You know, the civil rights era had done most of its most important work before I was even born. And on one hand, any one of us should be frustrated every day that some of us aren't given equal respect or even rights in this world. But it's pretty exciting to be able to be here today, to be part of the movement that's going on. When I founded the studio, there were people that joined my studio who were gay, but not comfortable with that being known. And today, some of those people are super comfortable with that, and like they're able to articulate how our culture is figuring this out. And I think that's really exciting to be a part of that. And as someone who's involved in entertainment and media, we realize that we have a voice there, and we can actually affect that. And so I'm pretty excited that our studio is set up such where any person that's a part of it can feel comfortable expressing themselves through our games. So like a lot of the things you just heard Anthony talk about weren't in the game because there's any particular initiative or checklist or something that we're trying to do to cover the bases. It's because that's important to Anthony and he wanted to do that. And other people, all the people on my left, also are expressing themselves in our video games. And it's a reflection. So the games themselves become a reflection of cultural interests. And I'm pretty excited that we all get to be a part of that. I know we have a lot of work to do, and I know we could be doing better for our part. And so, like, we all have a lot of work to do, but even our studio can do more. And so that's one of the other reasons why we came out here. We're going to talk about some of the things we've done and the way we think and kind of expose ourselves a bit, but I'm also hoping you challenge us and help us understand your thinking, because that's important. So in the Q&A session, please don't be shy. What are we doing next?
I believe we're kicking it over to Grant.
Okay, cool. All right. So Randy kind of touched on a lot of stuff. When I started at Gearbox, I was, I guess, in a closet at the office, but it was just because I was so focused on my career. Growing up as a gay guy, you have this notion of the outside world and what people are going to think of you, and what happens if you come out to the wrong people, what things would you have to change. And from the outside, like being a kid who grew up playing games, you hear a lot of negative things very often. So at first, I always knew I wanted to make video games, so I just kind of was able to push that all out because video games were it, and no matter what, I was going to make that my career. And so I kind of built up this, and I'm guessing most of you in this room have really thick skin when you play, well, any first-person shooter, but, and I got to the point where I kind of just accepted it as part of the culture, and I would still go and play my games, get to the top of the scoreboard and feel good about myself, and that was that. But it wasn't until I met my future husband, and he was not a gamer at all. He had never played any games growing up. I think you played Zelda at one time, or you really like Zelda, back on the NES, but he never played on consoles or on PC into first-person shooters. So when I introduced him to those kind of games, he would hear those kind of things, and for me, they just go over my head at that point. I just completely blocked them out. But it wasn't until he started to feel hurt seeing that stuff that I kind of stepped back and just because I had accepted it as what it was for me, it didn't mean it was actually right. So it was after I met him and he called it out that I kind of decided to put myself out there, and when I see that kind of stuff happen in games, I don't try to make a big deal out of it, but I try to say, if someone's acting like an idiot, just call them a fucking idiot. You don't have to do that kind of stuff. And so I encourage all of us as a community not to be mean-spirited, but just to politely say, if you see that kind of stuff, hey, that's kind of douchey. You can use any other word to describe your frustration. And I thank him for getting me to do that. He's very nice. And as I accepted that, and started to date Rich, I knew that Gearbox had this kind of culture that accepted that, and I obviously came out to the office after I met Rich. In Gearbox, because Gearbox had created this culture thanks to Anthony, other people at the office, really,
had nothing to do with me.
No.
Other things in play.
Yeah, but I knew that Gearbox was a safe place to come out to and share my view. And as Randy said, we all have these great peers, and we are free to talk about these kind of things at Gearbox, and that turns into these great characters that have authenticity. I think that's, as a gay guy, I like to see real characters, and I think any person, straight, woman, whatever, you just like to see real characters. And I think Gearbox has some great artists that do that, and some great writers that do that, and I'm very proud of that. So.
when we were talking about this before, you said we don't want to define the characters solely by their sexuality.
Yes. I think probably every queer, gay, straight, everything, you don't want to be, no one in here, I'm guessing, wants to be defined by their sexuality. We're all proud of it, it's a part of our lifestyle, it's part of who we are, but everyone in here has a million other parts of their life and about their personality that they want to have the world notice. And I think what Gearbox strives to do is take sexuality, gender, whatever, and use as a way to reach a larger audience and to give people something to connect with. When you connect with your characters that you're playing, and you can identify with them, you get more invested, and that makes for better entertainment because the stakes are automatically higher. So in the games I play and here at Gearbox, I'm always looking for what is a real character and how are they authentic. And if their sexuality happens to be similar to mine, that's just another facet that I can connect to. There's lots of great examples of that in games now, and it's becoming, I mean, we're here because it's becoming more of an issue, and there are more games like David this morning from BioWare and what they've been doing, and all kinds of other studios that are, Naughty Dog, they're starting to step up and add these kind of characters. And I think that's a great way of reaching an audience and making those characters more real and more interesting.
Well, it's normalizing too. Like one of my favorite aspects of Sir Hamelot's character isn't that he's gay; it's that his sexuality actually doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not like. And what's cool about that is when he reveals it, it's just sort of like, oh yeah, I had an old boyfriend that did this, and it's just as if that's totally normal. And we like to think that in Pandora, in this universe we created, there's absolutely nothing odd about that at all, where it's just totally the course of normal existence, and that's awesome. I like that.
So speaking of characters and all that, there's a new Borderlands game coming out, and it has characters in it.
This is Chris Failer. He's
PR marketing.
Head of marketing and PR at Gearbox Cosplay.
I have also been designated by everyone here to keep us quote-unquote on track.
Okay.
We have about 3 pictures that we want to show, and at some point I have to steer the conversation back so that we can go into the pictures.
Drive
Well,
away.
you did it so
Captain.
elegantly and so effortlessly before that I'm sure.
Why, Anthony, tell us about the 4 main characters.
How about fuck you? Somebody else want to do that? I've talked too much already.
Well, I think earlier today you and Randy were talking about how we came to the decision to have two female characters in this.
Yeah, it was literally a 15-second conversation.
Yep.
That's the story.
I remember it differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a continuation again of previously mentioned masturbation, but I hope you enjoy it. Which is that we really wanted to have a 1-to-1 ratio of males to females in terms of the playable characters in the pre-sequel, and it was a very, very trivial thing for us to decide to do. Not saying that with any subtext whatsoever.
What's funny is my memory of the interaction about, like, when we were talking about the characters, like, my focus is always like, okay, what characters would be interesting because of the timeline that we're looking at, and also which characters might give us gameplay that might be fun, right? And Anthony then said, that's not how I remember it. And he was talking about how he was like kind of agitated. He's like, no, this other character has to be Athena. And I'm like, I don't know, what was your memory of that? Like,
my memory was basically we knew we wanted Claptrap, we knew we wanted Nisha the sheriff, and we knew we wanted Wilhelm because of the way the story is sort of structured. And then we had this other idea for a character that was a male, and I wasn't, that had been the first time that I ever tried to speak up about anything diversity related in like a meeting with like you, with like the big man. And I didn't actually speak up, I just got like really shitty and passive aggressive. I was like, God damn it, fuck, yeah, sure, fine, yeah, have a Claptrap, great, it'll be awesome. And then you were like, what is going on? And And I told you, you're like, all you had to do was tell me that, it's fine. And then 3 seconds later, it was like, okay, cool, it'll be Athena then. And it was one and done. It was great.
And I'm grateful because Athena's like my favorite character now.
Yeah.
She's so awesome.
Yeah, she's like the fulcrum of our entire frame narrative and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm really glad for that one. That wasn't supposed to be a joke.
And so what have we learned?
Be very open with Randy.
What about some other characters in pre-sequel? Janie Springs?
Well, I've been working with Janie a lot. The section of the game I'm working on is towards the very beginning, and we created this new character called Janie Springs, who lives on the moon, and
Like you do.
Yeah, like you do in Borderlands, and she's kind of a badass. She can hold her own, and she basically introduces you to the moon, to Alpus, and shows you around. And depending on who you are, you actually find out that she's gay as well, and she's like the second new character that you meet in the whole game.
Yep.
Right?
No, she's the first new character.
Yeah, first new character that you meet in the game. And if you play, we've done some work behind the scenes tech-wise that depending on the character that you are, you actually will start getting custom responses to all your little turn-in quips and back and forth. And so her and Athena have kind of a back and forth relationship that over the course of
They're
the game,
flirting.
yeah, they kind of, over the course of the game, and as you see her throughout the game, you get to hear, if you play as Athena, different things, or if a character that you're playing with is Athena, you'll get to hear it. But she's great because she's just another character. Again, she's not like throwing it down your throat or anything. It's just like, hi, welcome to Alpus. I'm Jane Springs. Who are you? And then over the course of talking to her, you get to find out these other aspects of her life, and it's very natural, and it's not a big deal. And that's what's awesome about her as a character. It's not a big deal. And working with her and scripting her around and making her hut and everything, it was kind of cool to work on the first gay character I've ever worked on and actually be part of that and like script her around and make sure that she's a character. So what would she do? What's her hut? It wasn't like, okay, she's gay. Awesome. No.
One of the things I love about the character is because of the idea, it's inspired this kind of iteration on the technology and the way the software simulation works, where the context of her interaction with the player depends upon which player you're controlling, which character you're controlling, and that's kind of cool. Like, it's kind of encouraging a gameplay evolution, which we should be getting anyway. There should be, like, it doesn't matter about who the character I'm playing should have an effect on how people interact with me and relate to me.
Yep.
Anyone in this room might interact with me differently than they might interact, with Graham or Rochelle, and we should have that same experience in video games if we're going to have a game where we can choose different characters.
And be meaningful.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat that this character kind of inspired that iteration in our software.
Yep.
So switching gears a bit, Ashley, before we go into cosplay and talking about characters and all that,
Yeah.
what is a content artist?
What is it content? Okay, so we've been, the industry is still, we don't exactly, you might have a title at one company, but it'll mean something completely different at another. So an environment artist, a lot of people think, okay, well, you just make stuff in the environment, which is usually what I call what I do. So it's anything that's not a character is generally what an environment artist does. So that includes buildings, rocks, grass, anything. But then you also have environment artists might also mean that you build things. So content, we're kind of talking about content artists being you make the content that goes into the game. You might have an environment artist put that stuff together in a little, game design. It's gotten crazy. We have so many.
So what are some of the things you've built in your role as a content artist, things that players might recognize?
I've had just being an environment artist, I've had to do anything from a crate, but then I've gotten to do some creature stuff. So my favorite thing I've ever done was for Borderlands 2, because of all the new creatures we had to do, we had to go back into some of the older ones, and so I actually did the new skag for Borderlands 2. So that's one of my favorite things I've gotten to do.
Space crates are also important.
I know, they're very important for level designers.
We
I know
level
you need them.
designers love a good space crate.
Let's not marginalize our crates.
No.
Oh, no, I'm not
They're
marginalizing
fundamental
crates
to
at all.
all game design.
They are.
So, have you done any work on character skins?
Yes, actually. We've had, are you wanting me to talk about that one thing?
You can if you want to.
We've had a few skins for, I don't know if I want to talk about a specific one, or...
Okay, well, I'm just going to hit next.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Hey, you know what?
Oh, you're talking about these skins?
Yeah, that's
These
where I was
skins.
going.
What you were thinking.
Oh!
No, this is great. Do it.
Oh no, we've had to do some back and forth on some skins for some, particularly I got to do some of the skins for a lot of the Headhunter packs, because I had to work on like all the DLC, and that's been a lot of fun. But we had to do some skins for like the Siren. We were doing like Thanksgiving themed stuff, so we had to do a lot of that. And we were having a lot of back and forth, like, hey, how do we make this stuff like cool and actually fit in and, you know, not be offensive.
The Headhunter packs, by the way, in
Yeah.
case you didn't play them, they were all holiday themed.
Yeah.
So Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween. We found a way to make Easter into one of them. That was really
that
Amanda did some work on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
Wet
kill a
t-shirt
boss.
contest Salvador was my doings.
Oh, that one was amazing. That one was amazing.
That was like one of the first things I got to do at Gearbox, so that was pretty
Okay, so in the course of all of that,
Yes.
you were telling me about one time where you felt there was a costume that kind of went a little too far.
Yes.
And then you pushed back on it. Like, how did you actually deal with that? And what was the end result?
Yeah.
Which one are we talking about?
I'm not sure if we were supposed to say. I don't want to get in trouble.
It's fine.
How can you get in trouble?
We're in a
I
safe
don't know.
place.
This is a safe
No
place.
I know.
anyone here going to get us in trouble.
This is a safe environment.
It's a safe place.
Okay. Well, we had for the Thanksgiving one in particular, I got tasked to do the Siren skin for that, and she is dressed in all leather, and she's supposed to look kind of Native American, and we got some versions of it that I saw, and I was like, hey, maybe we should be a little bit more respectful of that culture, because I don't want to get a news story out of this. So, yeah. So we just, all it was just like, hey, maybe we could, you know, just adjust this a little bit. We just needed a little bit of a paint over, and so just commented in the task, and, just talk to the artists, and it was fine. There was no pushback or anything. It was just like, hey, just point it out, and they're like, oh yeah, sure, that's totally cool.
What I love about this, one of the things that's important that I've tried to make sure we can have in our culture is that you can't, like, each one of us has our own experiences, right? And each one of us kind of knows if something's right by us or not. Sometimes people can do really offensive things just totally accidentally. And it's only with a diverse studio that there can be those voices that can help us understand if something, like something that one person might do innocently might actually be really bad culturally, or to the feelings of someone else. And if we have a spectrum of people in the studio and diverse representation in the studio, then there's a voice that might understand that before something comes to be and can speak up and make change happen. And that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So
you're gonna sell us something now?
Yeah. So one thing we like is cosplayers. I think you saw it earlier. We had some pictures of Ellie, and Ashley actually helps out with a lot of our fans in our community, getting a lot of those cosplayers ready. One thing we learned in the course of developing pre-sequel is that the characters from Borderlands 2 also like to cosplay. So that's happening.
These are the Borderlands 2 characters cosplaying as the Borderlands pre-sequel characters. So like, look at like Zero is dressed up as Claptrap, for example. So and these are going to be free.
We'll have more details on these soon, but these are going to be available in-game beginning next Tuesday. So,
And what we're going to probably do, I'm probably going to be tweeting shift codes. So if you follow my Twitter, you can get first access to these. So yeah, and then we'll find other ways to get them out for more people down the road.
cool. Okay, so Ashley, you want to talk a bit more about cosplay?
Oh, sure. As a company, we adore cosplay. There's actually quite a few cosplayers at the company now, which is really awesome. We've seen. Do we have the slide up? I don't know. Oh, we've actually seen quite a few gender bends, which gender bend cosplay just means like you take the character and it might be one gender and you can make it another. You make it whatever you want, and we have we call it was it Handsome Jacqueline or Jacqueline, which I love her. She's so great. We actually have I know I've seen pictures of her up in the studio. I've also seen recently a Lady Torg done by It's Raining Neon. She's fantastic. Which the funny thing Anthony pointed out to me is that she's actually wearing more clothes than Torg, even though she's the female version. And that's great. We love seeing that just because it's one thing to take one character and just recreate it, but just to make it, it's like making it your own. You get to just show your even more creativity. Cosplay is creative as it is, but expand on the character. Seeing so many people come up with things that we might not have ever thought of. And so it's like we get inspiration from you guys cosplaying, our characters or however differently you do it. I think I've seen a guy walk around with I've seen all the Claptrap guys. We have the male Mad Moxie. Yeah, I forgot about him. He's, I want to see more of those. I want to see more male Mad Moxies. That's really cool.
That dude, at PAX East, we had all the cosplayers come up on stage, and there was a male Mad Moxie there that just got everybody freaked out. There were 3,000 people in this theater, and they just screamed. They loved it. And that was a really diverse audience, so, and they all really loved that. It stood out, so. If you're a cosplayer and want to get even more attention, put a twist on it.
Yeah.
So Amanda, what have you been working on lately?
Yeah, so much talk about Borderlands, but I was actually hired to work on Battleborn. I've done a little bit with the Borderlands, but for
Did
about...
you guys notice that we announced a new video game?
Yeah.
So Gearbox announced Battleborn on, was it Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was just Tuesday, so it was just a few days ago, and this is our next original game.
Yeah, Battleborn is really exciting to work on as a concept artist because it's a character-based game where not only is the sky the limit, but the universe is the limit. We're basically able to pull from all kinds of different sources and be like, what is a hero, really? What can a hero be? What is inspiring to different people?
I can set you up with the premise really quick, since some of you might not know the premise. The narrative premise of Battleborn takes place in the very, very far distant future. We know that at some point our own star will supernova and be gone. And eventually all of the stars in the entire universe will burn out. There's going to be a point where there's going to just be one star left, the last star. And in that point in the future, every species, every civilization that's ever appeared on any planet, on any distant solar system that has the ability to travel the stars will probably end up all, coalescing, converging around that last star. So you're going to get not merely, a diverse array of people, but a diverse array of every species one could ever imagine. So from a concept design point of view, it's the ultimate buffet, right?
we also have a ton of freedom because we're really, really pushing stylization. Borderlands is stylized, but Popular is even more so. And so that gives us freedom to explore a much wider range of different body types, different species, that sort of thing. So I can talk a little bit about the character I've designed that's been released so far, who's on the cover.
This one.
Her name is Reyna, and she is our rogue commander. So she's like a little bit of a scoundrel, freelance commander, a bit of an anti-hero. So when she was actually the first character I was assigned to do at Gearbox, which was really exciting because I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. And Montana, who is the giant juggernaut guy, had just been finished. So the art director and I were kind of brainstorming, like, what can we do with stylization and pushing this exaggeration in a way that is unconventional and a little bit unexpected, and also bring another body type into the roster of early characters. So I was thinking about the fact that in most games, and not just games, but media across the board, the heroic silhouette is almost always depicted as the triangle, or a very, very masculine silhouette. That's sort of like visual shorthand for strength, but I don't think it has to be that. And so with Reyna, we were like, all right, if Montana is this kind of hyperbole of masculinity, of the triangle, what happens if we take that and invert it and make a more bottom-heavy character and represent like a more pear-shaped kind of female silhouette in a way that's really grounded and badass and strong and empowering. So that was pretty cool to work on her. I'm excited for you guys to see more about that.
I think what's cool about Reyna is not only did you do the core character, but you did even the weapons and everything she's holding in her hand, and it even extended to some of her personality and the way that she acts in the game.
Yeah. She's very, very aggro, but also kind of smooth and in control. It's fun on Popular. The concept artists aren't only responsible for just the visual design, but we work pretty closely with the gameplay designers to talk about their different movesets and the way that they're going to move and the way that we're going to animate. We'll do full sheets of keyframe animations and that sort of thing. Yeah, we really try to integrate the process with the writers and the designers to sort of like what Graham was saying before, to create a character that is multifaceted and not just sort of one-dimensional, this is what it is, but it's across the board very unified and cohesive and unexpected.
Plus, she has a cape.
Also, she has a cape. I love capes. I also love...
Amanda did not watch The Incredibles.
Well, it's only like a tattered piece of a cape, so it might have like less of a chance of getting sucked in. I also really am obsessed with doing characters' hair, so I gave her a crazy swoopy pompadour. Yeah.
So she's going to be I expect her to be kind of a discoverable character. I think like on first look, she might be overlooked, but I think that there's going to be a segment that Reyna becomes the favorite for, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, a lot of people like her.
Yeah, she's my favorite.
So one of the things we mentioned earlier was knowing that we can do better. Randy, Anthony, what can we do better? And what are your ideas for
Well, if we
moving
knew,
ahead with
we'd
that?
be doing it.
Well, what about, say, making female bandits?
Yeah, we want to do that. So when you talk about why you might not have more female characters or whatever, there's not really a good reason. Talking about having more female bandits, we were initially a little bit leery of doing, because like on the one hand, it's super cool to have gender parity in enemies, because you're implying that they're of equal deadliness, and that's all super cool. But on the other hand, like violence against women is a real thing, and it might be a little bit weird to be in a game that's really over the top and have burning a woman alive and stuff like that. That feels inherently kind of different. And I was curious to ask you guys how you felt about that. We're hoping to introduce some female bandits and female psychos in Tales from the Borderlands, the Telltale game, if everything goes according to plan, and that's going to be really cool. But I was curious to know, once question time comes around, assuming we have time for it, how you guys sort of feel about gender parity in enemies that you fight as well. There are some female bandits in the pre-sequel that are really cool. They're big, like spacesuit having badasses. But, yeah.
He said the word gender parity, not
parody.
parity.
Yeah, sorry, parity.
Yeah.
Equality. And we want to have a trans character like you and I have talked about a lot.
Anthony and I have been trying to see if we can encourage a playable transgender character in the game. And I first was inspired by this. There's a friend of mine who is transgender who was a programmer on Borderlands 2. And she taught me a lot, actually. It's really difficult. If you happen to be someone whose genitals match your orientation and whose orientation and genitals also match your kind of self-image. If you happen to be one of those, it's kind of difficult to intuit the reality that there's different things that affect each of those vectors, right? There's a lot of diversity just in the biology of how our genitals might have ended up, and there's a lot of diversity in what we might be attracted to, and that's it. Those are completely different vectors. And then the third one is the vector of how we see ourselves. I used to be kind of a bigot against women that got fake breasts. I thought there must be something wrong with them, and there's a weakness there. And I was actually kind of intolerant about that. And she helped me understand that it's probable and not uncommon for human beings to see themselves differently than they're actually built. And that the way our brains are wired is not always exactly in parity with the way our all the things that relate to how our bodies form might end up. And if that's the case, how fortunate is it if we can do something about that with science? How fortunate is it that modern medicine can help to some degree? And if we're fortunate as a species, we'll get even better at that. And that was a really awesome kind of discovery for me, that she helped me figure out. And ever since then, I thought, man, we really need to cover that in some way and get that out there. And so I've been kind of subtly trying to encourage us to get a transgender playable character. And I think we will, it certainly at some point. And there's other frontiers even beyond that that might be even farther off. There's so many different ways that we can be unique, and then because of uniqueness feel marginalized. And it'd be nice for us as a studio to cover as many of those as possible. I do think we're likely, because I'm not going to lie, there is fear when you have creative people that are taking their time and trying to make something that other people like. There is fear, but there's also a lot of courage too. And so I think it's very probable that, for example, we will have a transgendered playable character even before we have an openly atheist playable character, right? And it kind of shows different layers of those frontiers of equality and acceptance. And I hope our studio can be one of the ones that's kind of part of that vanguard. And I know we're pushing for it.
That's it for what we wanted to cover. We've got a couple minutes left. What we'd really like is to hear from you guys. If you have any questions, get the hands up. I'll come to you. And then we'll all be hanging around afterwards out in the hallway. Our Twitter handles will be up here. So please, thanks Randy. Please, any thoughts, comments, whatever, let us know. Reach out to us however you feel comfortable. Hands, you're the first one I saw, then I'll head over there.